You're listening to Radigan's Rockcast, a series focused on talking about music from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even current. Now, here's your host, Tom Radigan.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to Radigan's Rockcast. I am, of course, your host, Tom Radigan, always, as in always. Thank you, whether you are listening to this on WMYO, YouTube, Anchor, Castos, Amazon, Spotify, wherever it is, I am glad you are on. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Now, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. Bands come and go, Some bands have, a great success for a little period of time. And there are some bands that can last through decade after decade. And, of course, we've seen it with the Rolling Stones that they've been able to last long. The Beatles, that was a different story in a sense, because we'll never know, considering John Lennon died 40 years ago. We'll never know if they, end up getting back together. They probably would have if they're alive, probably. But, but a band, so big bands of the 60s, especially during the British invasion. Of course, the Beatles, of course, the Stones, the Animals as well, the Who. But there was another band that was just as big and had a success for a long period of time, considering that, there was a lot of rivalry. And also, too, it was a band with two brothers in it. That band is the Kinks. Ray Davies, Dave Davies, Mick Avery, who was the drummer, and all that. They were people that were able to last from the 60s to the 70s. And, the album that we're going to talk about today is Low Budget. It came out in 1978. Now, the Kinks already had a career lasting for already at this point around 14 years, considering when in 64 they made it big with You Really Got Me. Now, a thing that to mention about this album is that it's got a lot of, punk in it, a lot of that hard rock as well. Some people consider the Kinks being the first punk band in a sense, because around this time when this album came out, you already had groups like the Sex Pistols, the Ramones, even the Police, in some ways are considered punk in a sense, with some of their songs. But the Kinks, some ways, started that with the song You Really Got Me, with a power chord like that. This album kind of, just brings more of, the 70s punk vibe to it. So of course it's got Ray Davies, Dave Davies, his brother, which they both apparently, had a really hard time working together and would always fight. So it's amazing in a sense that they were still able to be together for this. And Jim Raffer, who was their bass player, he was their, I think, third bass player at the moment, because, at the moment, of course, as you can tell, I'm not a huge Kinks fan. My friend is a diehard Kinks fan, and he'll be watching this and probably be yelling at me of if there are certain facts, or if there are certain things I don't say correctly or emphasize clearly and all that. But and Mick Avery was the drummer, from the when they first started. So let me tell you a little bit about how I got into the Kinks. So, I always, listened, when I was a kid, I knew the song You Really Got Me. I knew All Day and All Night. I knew all that. I actually thought that they did the Doors song Hello, I Love You, which is actually funny because I found out a year ago that it sounded similar to, people said it sounded similar to All Day and All Night. And there was even, Ray Davies and the group, wanted to sue them for that, considering that they didn't, Jim Morrison and Doors didn't open up, that they, kind of stole that riff. Which is funny because I didn't think those songs sound similar, but I did think that Jim Morrison sounded like Ray Davies, because I remember as a kid thinking that was the Kinks, and I didn't know that much about music at the time, but I just remember thinking that sounded like the Kinks, so I thought it was so weird when I just found out a few months ago that there was actually a lawsuit of that, so it was so weird. But, my friend, is a huge Kinks fan. And, I actually interviewed him on my channel, Anthony Sabino, who's a drummer. And I will dedicate this episode to him. He is the biggest Kinks fan I've ever known, and might be the biggest Kinks fan out there. And, I mean, for good reason. They've got great music. They've got a lot of stuff. I mean, I always love their stuff. Of course, You Really Got Me, All Day and All Night, Sunny Afternoon, Lola. And, I knew this, because it's funny, because I didn't know that the Kinks lasted this long. That they lasted from the 60s, 70s, and 80s and all that stuff. And my friend Anthony says that there is no decade that defines them even more. 60s Kinks is good, he says. 70s Kinks is good, and 80s Kinks are good. So it was interesting that they lasted this long, because I didn't know that. Like, the only songs I really knew were, like, You Really Got Me. I didn't know that much. I didn't know that they lasted longer. And the first time I found out about that was when I was in high school. My film teacher was playing the song Superman, and I saw it was by the Kinks and said 1978 on it, which was surprising to me, because, I didn't know that the Kinks were still together at that time. And I remember thinking the song was called Super Senior because my teacher had a very, really interesting type of sense of humor. And I think he had his students that he thought were his favorite, and some that he would, thought weren't as go-getters and all that. But, regardless, he did this, like, he was singing the song Superman as Super Senior. And I actually thought it was Super Seniors, stupid me. And he would say, Super Senior, I wanna be a Super Senior. And like that's like, and I honestly thought that's what it was. And I thought like maybe a Super Senior didn't count as like high school stuff. I thought maybe it counted as something else. But then it was Superman. And, so that's how I got introduced to the album Low Budget altogether, because that was one of the main singles on it, Wish I Could Fly Like Superman. And it's definitely got that cool like funk beat too, like, well, not funk, more just like a hard rock beat, and just like a song you could definitely work out to, and just like interesting lyrics that just kind of like, a little redundant, but they work well. Like, woke up this morning, started to and like it just works so well. Had a cigarette and a cup of tea, like had another sneeze and I blew my nose. I mean, just like, yeah. And it's just, a guy who's just, feeling like he wants to be strong and just wishes he could be like Superman. And this album actually focuses on two superheroes, because there's also Captain America in the song Catch Me While I'm Falling. But why don't we, discuss this album, like, all together at once? Because because I made a goal to listen to this album, and I've listened to this album now for about almost 10 times I've listened to this album. And, each song, like, out of all the songs I think of, there's no song that I didn't like or that didn't stand out to me, all of them were good. And, like I said, it's interesting because the Kinks were around in the early 60s. They were, started they were in the first wave of the British invasion and all that. And what's interesting is this album has a lot of similarities to the groups that were inspired after them, like The Clash, and and the Sex Pistols. Definitely like a lot of even some songs kind of remind me of The Police. And and the thing I have a problem with, some songs sound a little similar to each other. Like Attitude definitely sounds honestly like a one of those punk police songs like Fall Out or Next to You. So it feels like it's got a little bit more of that. It doesn't seem like it has their own, quality as from what I know of the Kinks, but it works. All the songs are written by Ray Davies. Ray Davies sings on all of them. Ray Davies has got an interesting type of voice, definitely like a hardcore rocker voice. Attitude is definitely a very punk rebellion song. Definitely a rebellious song. Like that was, what the punk movement was about, and all that. So then we've got, Catch Me Now I'm Falling. Now, this song definitely feels like a Kinks song. And, Ray Davies sings it really, just very, it's just his voice, there's something about it that makes you into it, really hooked on it. And yeah, and like I said, it focus like this album. It's funny how it focuses on superheroes, because this one focuses on Captain America, and yeah, I love the chorus. This is Captain America calling, and it's so catchy. And what I like about it is that it's long. And you know what's interesting, because it's 5 minutes. Some songs that have a catchy chorus that are long sometimes have the solo that's dragged down and never works and all that stuff. But what's interesting about this is, it's got the catchy, chorus, you hear it 2 times, and the verses, then it's got a little bit of that solo, but it goes right back to that thing, which it's like, if you're listening to the song and you wish that you can hear that part again, because there are certain songs that you listen to because you like just one specific part in it, maybe. But the funny thing is, so if you're interested in that part, it'll come back, and and that is what carries the song, especially thinking and some people could probably mistake it thinking the song's called Captain America. But yeah, and then there's Pressure, which is another punk song that definitely is more around what was going on in that movement. So Kinks were going on that trend of staying in the staying striking while the iron's hot, and punk was big at that time in 78, around that. So then we've got National Health, which is of course another type of definitely punk lyrics. I love this song because it's just it starts off with such a cool hook, and then it just moves on with talking about things like Valium, and then having a reference to Freud, and all that. Love that. And then of course we've got the main song that introduced me to this album, which is Wish I Could Fly Like Superman, like I talked a little bit about. I listen to this song a lot when I run. And because this song's about it's like working out, it's just wanting to feel strong, just wanting to feel impressive and all that stuff. And and it works. There actually is because this is 3 minutes, but there actually is a 6-minute version song that's longer. I've listened to this album on the streaming service Amazon Music, but I don't know where the other version of it is, because there is, and it is actually in the bonus of the 5-minute the longer version, and they have a few longer versions, like Catch Me Now apparently is extended as well, even though that is 5 minutes. That's just there's an extended where it's 6 minutes and all that. And then we've got the title track, which is Low Budget, it's funny just about a guy who's on a low budget, and it's just this funny lyrics, and just kind of poking that oh, I'm just a loser and a fool and all that, and it's funny because this album, because this of course is they were an English group, and all that, but the cover art, and that even the title of the album's got a very New York City vibe, and the whole album does have that New York City vibe. And yeah, it was recorded in New York at Power Station actually, and Power Station Studio. Ray Davies of course produced it, but yeah, it definitely has that New York sound. I think that's what's cool about it. If there's any concept, it's a New York concept album, and even America in the 70s and all that. So then we've got In a Space, which, like I said, there are a few songs that just sound too similar to stuff. That's the same even with the Rolling Stones too. There are some songs that sound a little too much like the Stones, where it's it sounds a little too much like Ray Davies is sounding too much is imitating Mick Jagger and stuff like that at some points, that's the only thing that's sort of weird in some ways, but In a Space kind of sounds like Jesus Christ Superstar in a sense, a little similar to that it sounds, and this song definitely has even it sounds like he's imitating Mick Jagger and all that stuff, so not so much originality here in this, but I still like it. I think it works well, and I know my friend is gonna have a lot to say to me about this, and all that, but what I like about In Space is just like, because like I said, I think Ray Davies has this interesting type of voice that's, very, hardcore, very what's the word, just very edgy, just very all over the place, and just very like, oh, ready to rock, and all that, and he has that. He has some songs where he goes into a little bit more of a soft thing, like Catch Me Now I'm Falling, and the next track after In a Space, which is Little Bit of Emotion. Like, I love the, thinking about it, his voice is so soft in it, and it works so well, and, it's not like, even though, this song is softer, it's, it sounds like a rock ballad. It's not like an actual, like, I love you ballad. It's, just these guys going a little bit soft, but still, it's a rock song, totally, and then, of course, another song, which was the second song I've listened to on this album, which was a big single, which was A Gallon of Gas. And this is a very, like, bluesy type of song of a guy who's, very wealthy, which is probably focusing on their lifestyle, in all that sense. And, I think focusing on, too, because around this time, there was a gas shortage. Now I can speak a little bit better, I guess. There was a gas shortage in the 1970s under President Jimmy Carter. And, this song, I don't know if it was so much like, you could tell that this was going around at that time. So it works that, like, this song works of, of that going on. That it's like, I can't get a gallon of gas. Like, I can score you some Coke at a 747, but I can't get a gallon of gas. It's really funny. And, like, like how it just goes more and more. I got some, like, dollars and speed, all the drugs that you need, but I can't afford a gallon of gas. It's just, it works pretty well. It's just a very funny, tongue-in-cheek lyrics. You could tell that Ray Davies has a wild sense of humor. Of course, maybe some ways he could be called a cynic. But, it works well. And then, the last two songs, we have Misery, which is, like, kind of like, this is a blend of, how the Kinks started with their music and, their own style, but to also bit of the what was going on with the punk movement with the 70s and all that in it too. So it's like a mix of that. Definitely works. Especially you can tell it feels so punky. It feels like a punk song when, there's like the calm response, like, when got you in my house, and then there's like an audience who are probably like, my house, yeah. And then the song that ends the album, which is really, really cool, really like, very like, just out there, just, very just like, like very kind of like, groovy, just like, in your face, very transparent, I think is the way to say this, how the song works, moving pictures, and it's a great way to end the album. I think this is, honestly, like one of my favorite songs on the album. Just very, like, kind of like, it's very more of like a kind of, I don't know if psychedelic is the word, but more of like the psychedelic of the 70s, of like kind of that thing, like more of like, because psychedelic was a big thing in the 60s, but, the way it's saying it, just a very like, very, very 70s, very, and all that, is the best way to describe this song, and all that. But it works well, and, like life is only a moving picture. So that's what I have to say about this album. I definitely want to listen to more Kinks albums, because I will admit, I'm not, like, I haven't listened to that many Kinks albums, and I thought that this was an interesting, because, I've always loved, certain Kinks songs, and this was an album that was always speaking to me, but yeah, I'm definitely going to try, some other Kinks albums. Of course, my friends could recommend a ton, and all that. After this, episode comes out, he'll be sending me, like, everything in their catalog, but also, what I've got to say is, if you have any type of music that you think I should talk about, or if you have any Kinks album that's your favorite, you can always email me at tomradigan66@gmail.com to focus on what I should work on and all that. And yeah, and that's it. That's for today's edition for you people. Yeah.